My name is Joe Peroni, and this is the Rise Above Project. And today I want to answer the question, is Donald Trump a Nazi? Is he a fascist? Is he a dictator? Is he an authoritarian? Or is he even a Republican? Now, in order to answer this question, you have to know what a fascist is. You have to know what an authoritarian is, and so on and so forth. So we're going to get to that in a little while. But no matter what your opinion is right now, whether it's based on a feeling or whether it's based on a fact, I would suggest that one of the things that you do is take a look at the opinions of people who actually worked with Donald Trump, because they obviously know him a lot better than you do. So I want to do this show today before a lot of people go into the voting booth and they have this idea that, oh, he must be a fascist. That can't be true. That's impossible. So let's take a look at what other people are saying. So I'm going to have to read a lot of this because I don't want anybody out there to think I'm making this up or it's off the top of my head. I'm going to take actual quotes. But before we do that, let's just take an overall look at this. Let's take a look at Republicans in general. So we have a vice presidential nominee, J.D. Vance. He's going to be the second in command, so to speak, if Donald Trump wins. What has he said about Donald Trump? He said that Trump is America's Nazi. Now, why do we need to forget that now that Donald Trump chose him? We don't. Again, let's say it again. J.D. Vance has said that Trump is America's Nazi. Mike Pence, who was the vice president under Donald Trump, obviously is not going to support Donald Trump this time around for obvious reasons. He tried to have him killed. Okay, so let's move on from that. The Cheney family is extremely conservative and has been a big part of the Republican Party for about, 30 years at least. Well, Dick Cheney has not endorsed Trump. Let's go along. His daughter, Lynn Cheney, has supported Kamala Harris and is now going around with her doing rallies. Let's take a look at Mitt Romney, who did run for president in the year 2012. Again, the head of the Republican Party, but he's not anymore. He is pushed out. So Mitt Romney in no way, shape, or form is going to support Donald Trump, although he has not endorsed Kamala Harris because he thinks that he wants to have an opening just in case Donald Trump loses. He wants to be able to get back in with the Republican Party. The McCain family. Again, Republicans. John McCain ran for president in 2008. What does their family think? Their family in no way, shape, or form will support Donald Trump. And who do they support? Kamala Harris. So when we're looking at this objectively, what are we seeing here? What we're seeing here is that Donald Trump can't really even be considered to be a Republican. So if you love this guy, if you're one of his cult followers, you have to think about this because you're not actually following a Republican. You're following somebody that's something way different. And we don't need to get into that right now. So let's just look at that as the overview, is that most, if not all, people that are very invested in the Republican Party, those who have won positions in this party, presidents, vice presidents, you name it, none of them are supporting Donald Trump. Did I mention the Bush family as well? They are also not supporting Donald Trump. So you can't find a legitimate Republican who's ever been in power that wants to support Donald Trump. Now, just think about that for a little bit. Now, let's go on. I'm going to read some of this. Let me bring this up. Again, if you have an opinion on this, ask yourself how much your opinion is worth. Because if you have an opinion on whether he's an authoritarian, whether he's a dictator, whether he's a Nazi or a fascist, you don't know him like the people do who actually see him and work with him on a daily basis. And it's very odd that the people who work with him have completely shunned him. They don't want to have anything to do with him. So let's go down some of this list. And I'm going to use some quotes because I've mentioned some of the names already. So number one, Vice President Mike Pence, quote, "The American people deserve to know that President Trump asked me to put him over my oath of the Constitution. Anyone who puts himself over the Constitution should never be President of the United States." Number two, his second Attorney General, Bill Barr. "Someone engaged in that kind of bullying about a process that is fundamental to our system and to our self-government shouldn't be anywhere near the Oval Office." Number three, First Secretary of Defense, James Mattis. "Donald Trump is the first president in my lifetime who does not try to unite the American people, does not even pretend to try. Instead, he tries to divide us." Four, Second Secretary of Defense, Mark Esper. "I think he's unfit for office." Number five, his chairman of the Joint Chiefs, retired General Mark Milley. And he said a lot this week. Let's just narrow it down. He said, "We do not take an oath to a wannabe dictator. We take an oath to the Constitution, and we take an oath to the idea that is America, and we are willing to die to protect it." Continuing, First Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson. "Trump's understanding of global events, his understanding of global history, his understanding of U.S. history is limited. It's really hard to have a conversation with someone who doesn't even understand the concept for why we're even talking about this." Ambassador to the United States, Nikki Haley. "He used to be good on foreign policy, and now he has started to walk it back and get weak in the knees. A terrible thing happened on January 6th, and he called it a beautiful day." Presidential Transition Vice Chairman, Chris Christie. "Someone who I would argue now is only out for himself." Second National Security Advisor, H.R. McMaster. "We saw the absence of leadership, really anti-leadership, and what that can do to our country." National Security Advisor John Bolton. "I believe foreign leaders think that he is a laughing fool." Second Chief of Staff John Kelly. "A person that has nothing but contempt for our democratic institutions, our Constitution, and the rule of law. There is nothing more that can be said. God help us." Number 12, former acting Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney, who resigned as U.S. Special Envoy to Ireland after January 6th. "I quit because I think he failed at being the president when we needed him the most." Former Communications Director Anthony Scaramucci. "He is the domestic terrorist of the 21st century." Another former Communications Director. "I am terrified of him running in 2024. Secretary of Education. "When I saw what was happening on January 6th and that he didn't see the president step in and do what he could have done and turn it back or slow it down or really address the situation at all, it was obvious to me that I couldn't continue." And on and on. This goes on for, I'm going to be here all day reading these. Let's take a few more though, just to give you an idea. Homeland Security Advisor Tom Bossert. "The president undermined American democracy baselessly for months as a result. He's culpable for this siege, and he's an utter disgrace." Former personal lawyer and fixer Michael Cohen. "Donald Trump's an idiot. His White House lawyer Ty Cobb. Trump relentlessly puts forth claims that are not true." A top aide in charge of his outreach to African Americans said, "Donald Trump, who would attack civil rights icons and professional athletes, who would go after grieving black widows, who would say that there are good people on both sides, who endorse and accuse child molester. Donald Trump and his decisions and his behavior was harming the country. I could no longer be part of this madness." Chief of Staff Cassidy Hutchinson. "I think Donald Trump is the most grave threat we will ever face to our democracy in our lifetime and potentially in American history." So that's part of it. Let's move on to some other things here. Again, we can do this all day. So why am I doing this? Why am I reading this? Because it might be boring to read all this. It's because the news doesn't push this hard enough. They've been pushing it hard for about maybe a week, which is like really way too late. This garbage should have been pushed for about the last 9 years, but it hasn't been. And again, if you're making a decision to vote for this guy, You have to ask yourself, do you know more than the people who actually work for him? And if you think you do, I want to know what you think you know, and I want to know why you are trying to vote for a guy that the people nearest him don't even think he's a normal Republican. They don't think that he should be anywhere near the White House. They say that he has Nazi tendencies. They say he's a fascist, he's a dictator, and he's an authoritarian. So that's the answer, unless you come up with something different, that you know something that all of these people don't know. Okay, so now we're looking at John Kelly. Now, if you're not sure what the word fascism means, let's take a look at this. And what John Kelly is saying here, he said, well, looking at the definition of fascism, it's a far-right, authoritarian, ultra-nationalist political ideology and movement characterized by a dictatorial leader, centralized autocracy, militarism, forcible suppression of opposition. And of course, I lost my place. And what he says is, certainly the former president is in the far right area. He is certainly an authoritarian. He admires people who are dictators. He has said that. So he certainly falls into the general definition of a fascist, for sure, Kelly also said. He also said that Trump has said that Hitler has done some good things. Elizabeth Newman, a former Trump-appointed senior official at the Department of Homeland Security, said that Kelly's evaluation of Trump, that she agrees that Trump is not fit for office. He has authoritarian tendencies and does not operate by the rule of law. And it goes on. 13 more people backed up John Kelly here in the last day or two about saying this. So although it seems a little bit hyperbolic or a little bit outrageous to call somebody a Nazi or a fascist, but then again, if these tendencies are real, they're showing this. They are literally on the campaign trail saying that they want to militarize or they want to weaponize our military to come after people who disagree with him, including liberals, anybody who has a thought, anybody who's a journalist that writes something against him, news agencies. These are types of things that happened in Nazi Germany. He's saying it out loud. There are so many misguided people that are following Donald Trump that he is actually allowed to say this out loud and not have much blowback on this. As a matter of fact, he has a good chance to win this election. It's probably about a 50-50 chance, which is outrageous because he's actually repeating a lot of the same things that Adolf Hitler did. And I and a lot of other people can't even understand how this is a close election. This type of garbage is actually sitting everywhere. When I go to church, there's people who like Donald Trump, and yet Donald Trump is the furthest thing that a religious person would ever want to look up to in any way, shape, or form. This garbage is in my family. How in the world are we having people support a Nazi dictator fascist? I don't understand it. And again, let me say for the 10th time, because these news stations don't seem to be able to press on it enough, is that yes, he has all these tendencies. Yes, he has tried to overturn the government. Yes, he tries to clamp down on freedom of the press. Yes, he tries to say that the press is the enemy of the people. He continues to do this. He continues to say that all of the things that are against him are fake news, and these Trump supporters just follow it, and they don't want to see anything that's true. Let's continue with this, see if I can find you one more thing. And again, I understand, right, that if you're a Trump supporter, it doesn't matter. I mean, you could see them try to overthrow the government, and you're going to say, yay, that's good. I get that. You're that brainwashed. I understand. But when all is said and done, I want my voice to be on the right side of history here. And so I'm going to try up until the day I can't. So let's go along with this here. You might find this interesting. Let me read part of this letter here. It says, "We are the former public servants who swore an oath to the Constitution. Many of us risked our lives for it. We are retired generals, admirals, senior non-commissioned officers, ambassadors, and senior civilian national security leaders. We are Republicans, Democrats, Independents. We are loyal to the ideals of our nation, like freedom, democracy, and the rule of law, not to any one individual or party. We do not agree on everything, but we all adhere to two fundamental principles. First, we believe America's national security requires a serious and capable commander-in-chief. Second, we believe American democracy is invaluable. Each generation has a responsibility to defend it. That is why we, the undersigned, proudly endorse Kamala Harris to be the next President of the United States. This election is a choice between serious leadership and vengeful impulsiveness. It is a choice between democracy and authoritarianism. Vice President Harris defends America's democratic ideals, while former President Donald Trump endangers them. We do not make such assessment lightly. We are trained to make sober, rational decisions. This is how we know Vice President Harris would make an excellent commander-in-chief, while Mr. Trump has proven he is not up to the job. As leaders, we know effective leadership requires in-depth knowledge, careful deliberation, understanding of your adversaries, and empathy for those you lead. It requires listening to those with expertise and not firing them when they disagree with you. Vice President Harris has proven she is an effective leader, able to advance American national security interests. Her relentless diplomacy with allies around the globe preserved a united front in support for Ukraine's fight against Russian aggression. She grasped the reality of American military deterrence, promising to preserve the American military's status as the most lethal force in the world." Let me skip through this a little bit. Further, Mr. Trump denigrates our great country and does not believe in the American ideal that our leaders should reflect the will of the people. While Vice President Harris follows the democratic norms we expect of any political leader, including promising to abide by the outcome of the pending election and respecting the rule of law, Mr. Trump is the first president in American history to actively undermine the peaceful transfer of power, the bedrock of American democracy. Mr. Trump threatens our democratic system. He has said so himself. He has called for the termination of parts of the Constitution. He said he wants to be a dictator, and his clarification that he would only be a dictator for a day is not very reassuring. He has undermined the faith in our elections by repeating lies without evidence of millions of fraudulent votes. He has shown no remorse for trying to overturn the 2020 election on January 6th. Promises to pardon the convicted perpetrators, and has made clear he will not respect the results of the 2024 election should he lose. That alone proves Mr. Trump is unfit to be commander-in-chief. We believe, as President Ronald Reagan said, that America is a shining city on a hill. Yet in this election, one of President Reagan's more ominous warnings is equally relevant. Freedom, he said, is never more than one generation away from extinction. Our endorsement of Vice President Harris is an endorsement of freedom and an act of patriotism. It is an endorsement of democratic ideals, of competence, and of relentless optimism in America's future. We hope you will join us in voting for her. Sincerely, President of the National Security Leaders for America. Now, it does say here that they're liberals and conservatives and independents. However, most of these people are at the very height of the government in terms of the military. So, which of course is mostly Republican, very conservative. So the National Security Leaders of America is basically Republican. And who has signed this? It's 741 former people who worked in the military here has signed this. So again, what does this tell you? It took me 20 minutes to do this. I can do this for another 2 hours if you want. Person after person after person who knows Donald Trump on a personal basis, or can tell you about what national security is or what patriotism is, they take this stuff seriously. And you can't find very many Republicans here or anybody who's worked with him that's going to stand by his side. So remember that when you go in to vote here. Do you really think that your opinion here is more valuable than the people that I've already told you about? Anyway, hopefully that convinces you. So to answer the question, is Donald Trump a Nazi or a fascist or a dictator, authoritarian, or is he even a Republican? Look at the evidence. Look at the evidence. It'll bring you right to it. He loves dictators. He loves fascism. Anyway, my name is Joe Prony. This is the Rise Above Project. Please subscribe and tell a friend. Thank you.